find yourself in this place of not knowing what to do or where to go or anything like that. But you know that something's going on inside of you that needs to be resolved, right? And so whenever that happens, I was like that a couple of weeks ago, and whenever I get like that, I need a word from God when I get like that. And so sometimes just reading my Bible, it don't work for me sometimes, just because I've done that religiously and in a bad sense so much that it just doesn't, I'm so numb to it sometimes that I need like an actual word from God inside of here, or praise and worship, worshiping and stuff like that. It helps a lot, but it's almost like a symptom reliever instead of a root solver for me. And so I was just, in desperation mode one time, wondering what's going on. And I was dealing with all of these things, these emotions that I had inside. And I was like really sad. And then on the other hand, I was really angry. And I didn't know what to do with those things. And I didn't know where they were coming from. And any of you that have listened to me talk realize that I talk a lot about emotions and what those emotions are attached to in your past. And so God will put his finger on those things and unlock those for emotional and physical healing inside of your body. So that's just kind of my journey right now. And so I'm having this dialogue with God. God, what is this anger attached to? God, what is this sadness attached to, and everything? And he's getting me somewhere in these dialogues and in these conversations, and he's putting his finger on things, and I'm like, all right, yeah, we're getting somewhere. And then it was like I hit a brick wall, and like God was like saying, no, I'm not really putting my finger on this anger. I'm not really putting my finger on this sadness. We got to go somewhere else with this. And I was like, all right, well, I got to get a word. And so I'm just sitting there in one of my quiet times, and he just told me that unconditional love was mine, like it belonged to me, and the way that I took it was mine and it was me at the same time, and it was for me and it was for everybody else. And that's the way that it felt whenever it came in like that. Okay, so if you haven't had a word from God, when it comes in, that's how it feels. It feels like, even if it isn't about unconditional love, it could be about something else, but it feels like a love explosion going on inside of you. And so, and if you haven't had that, then I would encourage you to seek and find that, because it's one of the greatest things that you can experience in your life when God speaks to you and an explosion of love goes off inside of your body. It's unbelievable. But anyhow, so that happened, and so I was like, all right, that's my word. Unconditional love is mine. And so every day I would wake up, and before any other feelings, or I would try to get out ahead of those feelings, and I'd be like, unconditional love is mine. It's for me. It is me. It's who my God is. It's who Christ is. It's who the Christ is in me, and all of those things, and just meditating and praying that word all the time. And a lot of times whenever you do that, the next day, it don't feel like the love explosion going off inside of you. It feels like that sometimes you are just casting things off into thin air. But that's not real. That's what your brain tells you that's going on. But that's not what's actually going on. But what you're doing is trusting in the word that God gave you, that it's for you and for your life at that time, because you're trusting that the work that God started, he's going to see it finished through. And so whenever you're praying those words that he gave you, you are trusting that he is starting what he completed in you, okay? And so this is just all of my thought processes and what God's taught me about this. And so I was there. Get up, go to work, come home, do all of these things. And then I come home one time, and I know whenever God's about to release something in me, because feels like there's just like a buzzing and my body is vibrating, and it feels like serious anxiety or stress or something like that, like something's pushing to the surface almost. I don't know if you've had that experience, but if you haven't had that experience, I encourage you to go and get a word from God and get that experience for yourself, because it's fantastic. So I was having that feeling all day, and I was like, all right, God, what is this? And then my wife and I are talking, and we were, talking about emotional things and, about things that we have dealt with in the past and things like that, things that she was dealing with. And I was like, all right, this is making me real uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about this anymore, because that was me like running away from what God was trying to do, right? And so I told her, I was like, no, we got to confront this. And so that night we were having quiet time and everything in there. And then God showed me that it wasn't anger or sadness that I was dealing with, but it was the longing was my problem. Okay, so there was a longing that was going on inside of me that led to my anger and my sadness. Okay, because of an unmet need that I thought that I needed in my life. All right, now, a lot of you, that probably hit you right in the gut right there, because a lot of you probably deal with some anger and sadness, and those things lead to depression. So if you are going off into depression, God doesn't want to deal with you about your depression. He wants to deal with you about your longing and what your longing led you into that depression, okay? Because what we want God to do is take care of our anger, take care of our sadness, and take care of our depression. But we don't want him to come over and say, all right, Micah, what were you longing for that got you into that place to begin with? Either our soul has to long for him, or we're going to end up over in anger or sadness or depression. Okay? And so what happened is God showed me instantly what I was longing for, and right there, I had a choice. Right there, God met me right there, and he's like, all right, Micah, this is it. You're prepared, you're mentally and physically prepared for me to show you what you're longing for and how you got yourself into this situation, okay? And then I had a choice to make, to either say, I'm going to keep longing for this, or I'm going to long for Christ, okay? And God will give you that choice. He will, if you are grabbing on to that, whatever you're longing for, he will not chop your hand off to make you quit holding on to it. Okay, and that's sometimes what we want God to do, because it's so much easier for us to let him force us into his will instead of us just freely letting it go. Okay, and he will not deal with those things until you're willing to open up and be honest and say, like, what was I longing for? And why was I longing for that? Okay? And so instead of me saying, like, all right, I'm not going to be angry anymore, I'm not going to be sad anymore, it's going to be like, no, that longing that I've been seeking for, that's not for anything else except for the Christ inside of me. Because that's the longing that I have for, is the Christ inside of me to grow and produce fruit for the earth, right? Because that's what we're here for, right? And so, but what happened was that whenever I realized that, I felt, it was like in an instant, whenever I said, okay, I'm willing to let this go, and I'm willing to not look at this situation anymore, and I'm willing to focus on who God is and who Christ is in me. As soon as I made that choice, something in my head went from here all the way down into my shoulders, and off into my shoulders, off into there, and down into my back. And it, like, I don't know if you've ever, like, went into high altitude and your ears just popped like crazy. Okay, that's what happened to me, all right? And what that was is it was stuck emotions inside of me. I was holding those emotions inside of me. And whenever you hold those emotions inside of you that you won't let God deal with, then they get stuck and trapped inside of you, and then that can make you sick. Okay? And so that's been a big part of my journey too, is that God's been showing me where I haven't let him deal with these things in my life. And he's like, no, Micah, you've actually had some trauma in your gallbladder from an experience that you had a long time ago, but instead of letting me deal with it, you had to go get surgery and had it taken out. And so I learned that one the hard way, okay? And so everything else that I'm going to deal with in my life, I'm going to first, not ignore doctors or anything like that, obviously, but say, all right, God, is this something that you can walk me through? Okay? Because as long as the flow is shut off in your body and those emotions aren't processed through Christ and in Christ, then they are trapped inside of you until you can let them go. All right? Now, we can go into scripture and dive into some things like that, but that's not what I'm going to do today. This is really fresh on me, and it happened to me Friday night. And so it's kind of difficult for me to share some of these things, but that's just what I'm going through. And I think that there's a lot of people talking on a Sunday morning right now that aren't bringing reality of their lives into meetings like this because they're too afraid or too vulnerable to let people know that they struggle with everyday things like that. And I'm not doing that out of judgment. It's just because I've heard so many Sundays, people talk on Sundays, and it's just not real. Micah, he's not polished up here. I'm not a polished speaker, but I'm trying to be real with you so that way you can take it, back home, and it's not like a task or hard or anything. It's just a trusting in who God is and trusting that he's going to walk you through it. Okay? So, there's more of a testimony in what God's walking me through right now, and it's fresh, and there's going to be more to come still. We talked about restoration of your soul the last time that I talked, and this is part of that restoration of your soul process too. So does anybody else have anything to add? This is short, so this is what I had this morning.
Yeah, we're not looking for polish.
It's so. Yes. Okay, I don't know if you guys remember Bobby Ramsey that sits back here, the big guy with the awesome hair. His niece took her own life the other day, and he's dealing with some physical things also, and so it's kind of it's just kind of one of those things where we need to hold Bobby up and help him get through these things, and so let's just close our eyes and just pray for Bobby. Father, we just say that we don't run from the giants. We don't run from the lion's den, but we just say that we trust you in the field with the giants, and we trust you in the lion's den. And we say, even though we don't understand things, God, you understand your own goodness, and that's all we need. And you're just revealing that to us every day, and you're revealing that to Bobby, revealing that to his family. Revealing your goodness in every aspect of our lives. Even when we don't see you as good, you're good. Even when we think that it's impossible for light to break through, we say light breaks through anyways. In spite of what we think, in spite of what we believe, in spite of what we feel. We thank you that the light of your goodness is touching Bobby and his family. I just want to take this moment too to just stay right here in this place and just say if anything that I said here today to where you can ask yourself honestly, what am I longing for? In these moments when I feel angry or hurt or sadness or even excitement, What is that longing? What is that thing that dominates my thinking so much that it distracts me from who God is inside of me? And so if that's you, you can just if that's you, I just want you to imagine inside of your belly, and it's just a bright light, as bright as a star inside of you. And that's the incorruptible seed of Christ that God put inside of you, okay? And if anything I said today resonated with you, then I want you to imagine that star, that incorruptible seed of Christ inside of you. And I want you to say to yourself, Christ, I trust you. Some of you can even feel the shift happening in your body right now. I felt it. You just say, Christ, I trust you. Christ, we trust you with our anger and our depression and our excitement even. I just feel something releasing right now in somebody's body, like on their right shoulder or something like that. It's releasing out of you right now. We just say, Christ, we trust you. Above my own knowing, above my own understanding, above what any man can tell me, what any man can teach me, we trust you. And we're not looking outside of ourselves for the Christ. We are looking inside of ourselves to the Christ inside of us, the real us. And we say, we trust you. So I don't know if that's weird to anybody or not, that prayer or anything that we just went through, but that's a little bit of the contemplation and prayer and meditation that I do at home. And it might seem weird or whatever because we're not saying Bible verses or traditional prayers that we hear every day or whatever, but it's something that's real inside of me. And so that's how I'm going to pray. So I encourage you to find what's real inside of you and start praying and believing God that way instead of how you've been taught to. So.
We have a special prayer for Carol.
Yes. Yes.
Our lady that lives with us.
Mm-hmm.
She had a real bad bout of it, had to go to the hospital. She got dehydrated, very weak. And she's back home now, but she just can't seem to get that strength back that she needs to try to get around.
Mm-hmm. Father, we just say everything that Carol has and everything that Carol needs is inside of her, and we just call forth the river of the Christ that's inside of her be her healing. We just thank you for that, God, that you're meeting every need. All right. Anybody else have anything? Okay. It's a short one, huh? Was it a short one? It is. Beat the Baptist. All right.